attack right there in the middle of the country and take back Seoul, they take the bottom part of the country. They move and push almost to the top, push them almost to China, and then the Chinese, 200,000 of them, line up on the river and take off after our boys. And here we are outnumbered 2-1 by the Chinese militia. And that was the big decision. MacArthur wanted to nuke them as they came across the river. And as you know, the President Truman would not allow that, so he fired MacArthur. And at that point, every decision is a bad decision when you start at the wrong premise. So there's a fight as to which one would be the right answer at that point. But the point is, if we follow biblical principle, we won't run into this in the future. We learn from past mistakes. But that does not stop the tremendous valor of our boys. And this, more than any other war memorial, points out the valor of our men fighting for causes of liberty and freedom for people they didn't even know. You've all read it, I'm sure.
Yes.
But if you haven't, our nation honors her sons and daughters who answered the call to defend a country they never knew and a people they never met. America doesn't take any land. We didn't take the treasure.
Right.
In any other empire, whether it be Alexander or Napoleon, they came in and they raped and they pillaged and they took everything out of the country. We go in and put 53,000 lives down for these people and then leave them with freedom, liberty, and Christianity. A Buddhist country, totally Buddhist at the beginning of the 20th century, is now 1/4 or 1/3 Christian. And evangelical Christians have exploded in number in Korea. So that South Korea is now sending missionaries to America. And when they're asked why, they say because it was the American missionaries in the 19th century and then that Presbyterian ministry in the early 20th century who paid the price, who fed our needy and our poor. And as Buddhists, we saw their love for us, and it was something we'd never experienced. And then there's the ones that were martyred. Because Korea was a warlord-controlled pagan country in the 19th century. And those boys from the Haystack Revival in 1805 came out of Williams College and started a missionary movement that then spawned out missionaries that went to Korea, 5 of which were martyred. The first 5 missionaries to Korea were martyred. And so the Korean people remember these things. They remember the sacrifice of the American missionaries that have come, just like the Chinese people remembered the sacrifice of a young runner who won the Olympics in 1924. What was his name?
Eric Little.
Eric Little, who comes to China and spends his life there for the next 15, 20 years, sends his family home, but then stays in a prison camp and dies in the prison camp rather than leave, because Winston Churchill bought his way out. He stayed there to be with the Chinese people and put a pregnant Chinese lady on the train that had come to get him. You know, that kind of sacrifice is what's remembered. And today, in those days, there were less than 1 million Christians in China in 1945, maybe as many as 5. We're looking at 100 to 200 million Christians in China, exploding. These people are paying a sacrifice of being persecuted like mad. And yet Christianity is expanding. And of course, the ultimate answer to war is what? The conversion of the soul and the transformation of the hearts and minds of the people in those countries. And that's what ultimately American military was about and needs to be about, is we only fight to defend liberty, and we do it biblically, and then we want to give you the gospel. It was Truman who said that, not Truman, it was MacArthur who said after World War II, the Japanese came to him and said, we've lost our God, and they asked, the actual emperor himself talked about bringing in missionaries and Bibles, and I know MacArthur made an effort to get missionaries and Bibles, and they did get several hundred missionaries to go, but not like what should have happened. But you know, when we have a situation like this, let's bring them the gospel, which is the real hope, and that they can become a Christian nation in heart and mind, rather than we force it from the outside, which never works, right? Anyway, this is great. This is from